welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to share with you a review of the new Urban Decay Elements palette. I'm also going to be comparing it to the Born to Run palette and share swatch comparisons and also a tutorial on this eye look. So if you guys want to know everything about this new Urban Decay palette, then just keep on watching. Alright, so the Elements palette is now available on the Urban Decay website for $52. It's available on QVC for $56, and it comes with an eyeshadow brush if you do buy it from QVC. That's why it's a little bit more expensive, I believe. And this palette has 19 shades in it. It's mostly shimmer. It has 15 shimmers and 4 matte shades. It's actually a really big size, a really pretty palette, and it has a full-size mirror. So comparing it to the Born to Run palette, this is $49, and here you get 21 shades. You get 13 shimmer shades and 8 matte shades, so it's a little bit more evenly distributed between mattes and shimmers compared to the Elements palette. And in this palette, you actually get less product than the Elements palette, and I was actually surprised by that because I feel like you get a lot of eyeshadow in here, but you get 0.42 ounces of product. All the pan sizes are the same in here. And then in the Elements palette, you get 0.53 ounces of product. So you're getting like 20% more eyeshadow for $3 more. So you are definitely getting a lot for the money with this palette. It is a really big size. Here's my head for size reference. And then when you go to open it, there's just like a little button there to actually get the palette open. But that is kind of like the overall layout of the palette, comparing it to the Born to Run palette too. I'm gonna get into swatches, swatch all 19 shades, and then I'll show you guys some swatch comparisons to the Born to Run palette. Alright, so I'm going to try to swatch all the shades fairly quickly and just let you guys know the shades and the names. And I'll start out with the center, the inner circle, and then go all the way out. So the first shade in the inner circle is called Luna, and this is kind of like a shadow topper. So it's just going to look like very glittery on my hand, but it's on the center of my eyes right now. And it's kind of like the shade in the Subculture palette and the Prism palette that's more of like a topper and not an eyeshadow on its own. And then this next shade is called Fortune Teller, and that shade is actually one of my favorite shades in the palette. Next to it is the shade Silver Burn, which is kind of like a purpley silver color. It has a little bit of a gold or a glitter reflect to it in the center. Next up, this is one of my favorite shadows. This is called Fool's Gold. It's like a greenish yellow. It's gorgeous and it swatches beautifully and it goes on the eye. Super pretty as well. Next, Moon Rock is one of my favorite neutrals in the palette. It is incredibly pigmented. It looks almost wet when you swatch it or apply it. Next, this is the shade Tentonic, which is very similar, but it has a little bit of like a green hint in there. It has a couple other shades in there too to kind of make it a little bit different. And then lastly, in the inner circle is the shade Hex Remedy, and this is a purple shimmer shade, and it has some glitter to it, so you'll see a little bit of a glitter chunk in there. But those are all of the 6 shades in the inner circle, and then also the top shade is the biggest shade in the palette. Moving into all of the bigger pans, the first shade is what's on my eyes today, and I just applied this with my finger and then I just topped it off with a wet brush, but it applies so beautifully. It's heavy water. And then next, I actually like combining these. I've applied every single shadow on my eyes. I've been really like trying a lot of different looks with this palette, just trying out a lot of different colorful looks. But this shade, Sapphire Dream, is the navy shade. It actually applies a lot better with your finger than a brush. I learned that the hard way because I had a ton of fallout applying it with a brush. And then Electric Air is what's on my inner corner. And this is like a really pretty kind of silvery shade. I'm gonna add a little bit more just so you guys can see like the true silver color. So that is Electric Air, and I also love the combination of this shade and the blue. Maybe I'll do an Instagram tutorial using both of those because I tried that out and I really love that look. And then next we have a match shadow. This is Antidote, and it's just like a really light brown color. It almost blends into my skin, but I've been using that as a first transition shade every time I've been using the palette. Then next we have the shade Secret Keeper, and this is a really pretty green shade. I love the greens in this palette. The next one is like my favorite green. This is called Earthbound. It's so pretty. And Swatches really pretty too. Like both of those look so good. Next up, the shade Elemental is a matte brown shade. This is another like good transition shade. And then next to that is Volcanic, which is a beautiful copper color. It's like a very pigmented shade. All of these shimmers, super consistent. Really, really love the formula. Next we have the shade Linus, which is a shimmery dark purple shade, and it has almost like a little bit of a brown hint to it. Next we have the shade Firestarter, and this is a matte like burgundy color. I'm wearing this in my crease too, and it has it's one of those mattes that has a glitter chunk for no reason. And this shade is called Dream Weaver. It's a pink matte, and it's a little bit like slightly chalkier. I did apply it on my eye and it was just fine, but it's not as creamy as the rest of the mattes. And we have one last shade. This is the shade Ego, and I feel like this one could have been a little bit more vibrant too because it's a shimmery purple. I just wish that it was just like a little bit, had more of a shimmer to it because it's a little lighter. I wish I had like that reflect as like some of these more metallic shimmer shades. That would be really pretty because this one's a little bit more toned down. But those are all 19 shades, super consistent formula. The mattes apply really nicely other than the pink one, but that's the one that I'm going to use the least. But it still went on the eye pretty good, but the rest of them, so easy to blend out. The shimmers are all really, really consistent. Some of them are more metallic than others, especially the ones in the inner circle, like all of the shimmers in this like 6 pan. They all look really, really good on the eye, but a lot of the other shimmers too as well. All right, so there are definitely similarities between both of these with the overall color palette, and the quality is pretty much the same for both palettes. So it's really consistent between both of them. Here you're gonna get double the mattes of this one. You get 8 mattes versus 4 mattes. And you do have still a lot of shimmers in this palette, but this is basically like an all shimmer palette. There are some shimmer shades in both that are almost identical to each other. So here is the Born to Run palette, and then this is the Elements palette. I just pulled out the shades that are like the most similar to each other in each palette. I'll let you guys know the names. This is Wonderlust from Born to Run, and this is Earthbound from Elements. This is Wild Heart in Born to Run, Ego, Double Life, Moon Rock, Ignite, Volcanic, and Guilt Trip and Linus. So those are all of the like most similar shades in both palettes. There's only 5 of them, and they are pretty similar, but 5 out of like almost 20 shades is not bad. And then of course you're gonna get like some similar matte shades, just like warm browns, but that's basically the same case in any palette. And because there isn't a ton of mattes in here, I would most likely reach for the Born to Run palette to have some more of those matte shades, especially like the warmer mattes. And you also have like a purple matte in here too to use with some of the purple shades in the Elements palette. So that's basically like the biggest difference is how many mattes and shimmers there are, because the actual color schemes of both palettes are fairly similar, but if you prefer more color, definitely go for this one. I would go for Born to Run if you're like neutral lover like I am, but you want more than brown, basically. So that's kind of everything I wanted to say about both palettes and how they compare to each other. Let's go ahead and get into the tutorial so you guys can see how I got this eye look using the Elements palette. All right, so getting into the palette, I'm gonna start off with the lightest matte shade, and that's the shade Antidote, and it's just like a really light brown color, and it does actually go on really pigmented in just like one sweep. I think I'm gonna end up using about 3 out of 4 of the matte shades, and they're all kind of like more warm tone shades, and there's like 1 purple matte in here too. So next I'm going in with the shade Elemental, which is kind of like this peanut butter color, and I'm using a Morphe M573. I really like this as a blending brush because it comes to like a little bit of a point. So there's really not a lot of mattes in this palette, but for the majority of the eye looks that I like to do, these are the shades that I like to use, which is like warm browns, because that's gonna go really nicely with like some of the purples in here and like taupey shades and coppers and greens. So I already built up the transition shades a lot, but I'm gonna add in some of the shade Firestarter, which is more of a red tone, just to make it a little bit deeper, and combining it with the brown kind of tones down the colorful, like the red look in this shade. All right, so those are all the matte shadows I'm using, and the fallout is like barely there at all, like really, yeah, basically like super minimal, if any at all, for fallout. And then I'm gonna go in with the shade Heavy Water. Hopefully this turns out okay with the kind of like reddish crease, but I'm gonna use this with my finger first and then probably apply a little bit more. It's such a pretty color. Apply a little bit more, maybe on a wet brush. Sometimes when I'm adding color to my lid, if I use a wet brush right away, like it's like too much too soon. The color is mostly there where I want it. I just want to add a little bit of Fix Plus onto a brush and just apply it slightly more precise, especially my inner and outer corner where I want it to be a little bit more pigmented. And I do find that all the shimmers in this palette are very consistent. There's not any like really chunky glittery shades. So I'm just blending out my crease slightly more with the shade Elemental, the matte brown shade. And then we're mostly kind of done, but I do want to add a couple of things. I also just added a little bit of a bronzy liner to my lower lash line. This is the metallic shadow stick from Galactic in the shade Cashmere. It's like harsh, but once I add in some of the matte shadows, we'll diffuse it out. But let's get something in my inner corner. Well, first of all, let me use this center shade. This is called Luna, and I'm just gonna apply it with my finger. And let's go in the center. I actually saw Samantha, I like that. Okay, that was a good idea. I saw Samantha Ravindal do a like super similar eye look to this on YouTube the other day, and she used like a MAC pigment. And when I saw this palette, I wanted to do something similar, or especially use the shadow in a similar way with like the darker shadows. I like it. I think it takes it up a notch, and it makes this center shade a lot more purposeful, because you could definitely do this with like basically every shadow in here. All right, so I really like that. Usually like in all of the other palettes that I have that have like a shadow topper like this, I don't use it, but because it's like featured in the center, I feel like I need to. So maybe I will start doing that a little bit more, because I feel like it's a really simple way to add on just like a little extra shimmer, just like kind of take up the look a little bit. I'm gonna go in with this shade Electric Air, which is kind of purpley, like a little bit in my tear duct. Yeah, I definitely like a little bit more of an intense, more than just like an inner corner highlight, just like a little extra shimmer. And then there's nothing for a brow bone highlight, so guess we're gonna skip that. I'll just do that with my Born to Run palette. Let me just grab the brow bone highlight shade, the shade Breakaway, just to have a little bit of a glow. Not necessary, but I feel like let's just add more shimmer, because I like to do that with colorful looks, just to kind of give it more dimension and not just focus all on the blue. I also just happen to have one of the Urban Decay Heavy Metals, the glitter eyeliner, and specifically this shade, and I'm like, how can I not use this right now, because I never have a chance to use it otherwise. So I want to start off maybe with some of the red. Let me just use like most of the matte shades on my lower lash line. So I'm gonna use Elemental and then maybe a little bit of Firestarter, and then finish it off with the glitter. So this is the shade Gamma Ray and the Heavy Metals. Let's start off simple with the inner corner. Okay, let's just do my whole lower lash line while we're at it. All right, so that is it for the eyeshadow. I just threw on mascara because I was worried about the glitter I didn't know if it was gonna be like too much, but once I put on mascara, like it all blends together. I'm going to dinner with my in-laws in like an hour, so I didn't want to look like too over the top, but they're used to it anyways. So that is the eyeshadow. I think it looks so pretty. I'm gonna apply some lashes and then just finish up with this review. All right, so this is the completed look with the Elements palette, and I actually did a very similar look with the Born to Run palette. I was wearing it in my last favorites video, and I have a tutorial on my Instagram, so I will link it below in case you guys want to see like something pretty similar with this palette. But overall, I'm really happy with the Elements palette. I think it's a really great quality and price point for how much product you're getting. When I first saw pictures, and I talked about this in my new makeup releases video, I wasn't like sure how big this would be and the quality, and just because it's a very different palette, but the quality is awesome. This is a huge palette. You get a lot for your money with this palette. I did actually get this as PR from Urban Decay, and I was shocked because I'm like, I just talked about this palette and then it just shows up at my house the next day. So that was completely unexpected, but I was kind of on the fence about purchasing it. So if I were to purchase it, I would think that it's kind of a little too similar to Born to Run. You do have some more pops of color, but really with the Born to Run palette, I'm gonna stick to most of the neutrals and the green and use the purple every now and then. So because with the Elements palette, I'm probably gonna do the same thing, just like use the neutral shades, the shade that I'm wearing today, the other green shade, and then maybe a couple of like the purpley shades. A lot of the looks that I'm going to do with this palette are basically going to be very similar to this, so it's up to you to decide if it's worth having both. I'm happy that I have both now. I'm going to use both, but if I had to pick one over the other, I would definitely choose the Born to Run palette, just for my preference of having like more neutrals with a pop of color versus committing to full-on colorful looks all the time. But overall, really, really awesome quality. It's like better than I expected for sure, because sometimes when palettes are a little bit different from Urban Decay, they can be hit or miss, but this one's definitely a good one. And I will say that if you're on the fence about this palette, if you want something like even cheaper that's gonna give you very similar looks, very similar layout and color scheme, Perception palette from ColourPop. This is, I think, like $20-something, $23 maybe. This has a very, very similar color scheme compared to both the Born to Run and the Elements palette. But this definitely does remind me a lot of the Elements palette because there's mostly shimmer shades, and then the mattes you get in here are more of those like warm brown and reddish tones, and then you have like those blues, purples, greens, and golds to play with. So you can definitely get a lot of similar looks with both palettes. These are what they look like compared to each other, like very similar color scheme. A lot of the shades that I would gravitate towards in here are basically all in here. So a lot cheaper if you guys want like a similar color scheme palette, and this is a really, really awesome quality. I will leave my review of the Perception palette down below too. Alright guys, so that is everything for this review of the Elements palette. Let me know if you guys picked it up in the comments down below, or you plan on purchasing it soon. Yeah, let me know your thoughts about it. Let me know how you like it compared to Born to Run. And if you guys like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll talk to you guys soon in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.